Chapter 7. Derecho. I woke up feeling way worse than the previous morning. I had slept unmoving for a while, curled up on a rather uneven bed, a slanted tree trunk. The impression of the trunk was pressed into my side and leg like a flesh engraving. Everything was even stiffer. Anxiety rode on both my shoulders. I hate anxiety, but there it was, like an old hypochondriac, warning me about my health. I felt frightened. Maybe it was the dream I couldn't remember. Maybe it was a realistic assessment of the really rotten situation I was in. In short, it was the perfect time for a storm. Distraction's the name of the game if you're suffering from a near-nervous breakdown. Psychotic break, maybe. Not that I had gone past the break, but that I was just on the verge. An engineer pal of mine used to say to women in the workplace, "Husband driving you nuts, let me distract you, my sweets." Memories like that have been popping up in the last few days. The distraction was a distant rumble. Thunder for sure, but not your regular thunder. As I lay in my own stress juices, sort of hiccuping my anxiety sobs, I thought, jets, knowing full well it was not. But there was no break in the thunder, just one long rumble, so jets wasn't a product of my deteriorating mental processes. Made sense in a way. Mainly, I don't believe I ever heard uninterrupted thunder before. Pushing up on my knees, then standing shakily, I looked around, out into the forest through my treehouse branches. There was some green light from the east and darkness beyond the trees to the northwest. Looking straight up, I saw the sharp edge of a squall line moving across a strange green sky of the deep past. The air was absolutely calm. I wasn't, of course, but I might have seemed calm because I was so exhausted from my uncomfortable night. Otherwise, I probably would have climbed up the biggest tree my treehouse tree was leaning on to see the incoming storm. I usually love storms, but I was just too wrung out to follow my worst instincts. Indirectly, MIZ Lion saved my butt again. Another sound penetrated my grogginess. It was kind of a roar too, but different. I thought I should get out of this damn tree and hunker down somewhere. Just at that moment, this new roar started ramping up, and within seconds a surge of water came crashing down the creek below, sweeping logs and boulders and probably prehistoric possums, giant elk, and for sure my spear along with it. My treehouse vibrated and began moving up and down. I could see the flood wasn't swallowing the mound where my tree's roots were half buried, so the up and down was from the catcher trees. It was a real flood. Damn. The first lightning became visible between the trees, and there was a lot of it. Even through the trees, which had started moving about like a restless crowd of stilt men as a straight-line wind came in, I could see 5 or 6 bolts simultaneously and continuously, explaining the non-stop thunder. The first drops of ancient rain came zipping through the fern-like leaves of the bald cypresses, bigger drops than I had ever seen, ping-pong ball size, and when the first one hit my bare shoulder, I dropped to my knees and rolled into the smallest ball I could do, put my arms over my head and face, and started crying again, thinking what a freaking sissy I was. I clenched my teeth and started working on manning up. Well, it was one hell of a storm, as you might suspect. A word came up from my stored information from the real world, derecho. Lots of big thunderstorms, linked together, etc. How I could reach back into my memory for such an artifact from the distant future while curled up in a naked ball, I don't know. But I'm happy it happens. Otherwise, I might start thinking this is normal, the growing flood below me and the giant tree movement implying 100-mile-an-hour winds. Thrashing, when it's happening to gargantuan trees, and you're in one, is kind of humbling. But for all the drama, the squall line passed by eventually. The treehouse and all of the trees in my viewing area weathered the weather in good shape. The flooded ground below would take many days to gradually drain into the roaring creek, and the ground would stay very saturated for a long time. Perhaps this whole area was a bit concave and tended to be moist most of the time, especially after storms, common, I'm guessing, to this climate. Thus the giant bald cypress forest. Humidity skyrocketed after the storms, reinforcing all the wetness. Maybe I'd come to the forest during a brief dry spell. Damn again. As I rode out the storm's ending, listening to the retreat of the flood, my physical discomfort started asserting itself as a noisy issue in my thinking. Itching, lots of itching, and chilled as my metabolism came down from all the terror, and more discomforts dictated by wet, wet, wet. I was becoming very hungry. Bad thought. There's no spearfishing in turbulent, muddy water. Oh, and no spear. There were contusions and abrasions accumulating on my unprotected skin from many small accidents in the treehouse. These did not improve my attitude about the clinging commute up and down the slick trunk to wade through endless, ankle-deep water. I knew I had to do it. Anxiety was severely restricting my mobility. The near falls from the trunk, the sudden slips in the treehouse with shin damage or toe agony, compounding to make me want to just stay curled up and asleep. Not good when your survival depends on you personally, no help from anybody, doing things like finding food, all the while being alert for the appearance of Ms. Lion, Mr. Water Snake, etc. Wading through the huge puddles with mud squishing between my toes, on the day after the storm, I came upon one of those berry bushes I mentioned before. Marble-sized, bright red and shiny, these were not like any berry I had ever seen at Whole Foods. Oh, maybe cranberries, but these were bigger and softer. Chokecherry, whispered in my mind. Just a guess. I'd had chokecherry jam one time. I was really hungry, but not crazy yet. I picked a handful, the best I could do with no box, sack, bag, or pocket, and took them back to my tree. Looking up that long, slick trunk, I realized I'd drop all or most of them just getting around the big vertical stem. So I climbed up on the root ball and set my bare buns on a horizontal dried root as big as my thigh and picked out what I would think of as my test berry. I'm not an engineer for nothing. I selected one of the bigger ones, popped it in my mouth, and rolled it around for a little while, then took it out, waiting anxiously for any symptom of stupidity like instant death. Nothing happened, even though I waited for probably 2 whole minutes, long enough for something as poisonous as, say, cobra venom to start killing me. I was really hungry after all. I pulled off a tiny bit of its skin, exposing the juicy fruit, and touched my tongue to it. A tart, barely sweet, vaguely familiar flavor hit me like a flashbulb in the dark. Whoom! It was as good a sensory rush as starving man could dream up, and my firm resolution to eat just one, then wait a few hours, blew away in the mild breeze. The whole handful went in my mouth. I chewed, swallowed the juice, chewed some more, crunching the small seeds and smashing the slightly tough outer skin, swallowed some more, and let out a sigh that surprised me with its gusto. Guilt, remorse, then fear hit me as I faced my lack of self-control. Probably, I thought, I just poisoned myself, because I'm an engineer of weak willpower.